My sincere thanks to the organizers of Pratispardha for inviting me to this panel discussion on yoga as India's soft power. I also thank Mr. Animesh Mishra and Mr. Abhay Pratap Singh for connecting me to this Pratispardha event. I have been asked by the organizers to do the introductory remarks. But before initiating, I would like to welcome all the panelists, Sri Arvind Mishra, Sri Rohan Kumar, Ms. Kirti Tripathi, Ms. Vasudha Divedi, and Mr. Kunal Shandilya. I hope that these young and the ignited minds will bring up an exciting and enriching discussion with full of insights for the listeners. In fact, today is a very big day for all the Indians, as yoga, which has been roots in the Indian culture, philosophy, and medicinal system, has been officially recognized by United Nations, and in fact, all the nations by all the nations as a virtue to attain peace and tranquility of mind and physical wellness. And on this day, that is 21st June, every year, Committee of Nations celebrate the International Yoga Day, and they practice and celebrate yoga as they do throughout the year. It is not that before this effort by the Indian government, yoga was absent in Europe and America. It was very much there, and it was brought to different regions of the world by the civil society groups and the wellness practitioners. But no one had thought of making it India's soft power to exert India's cultural influence abroad. It was for the first time that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi started working on this project to turn yoga, which was already popular in Europe and America and most of the part of the world, to convert yoga as India's soft power to India's cultural influence abroad. In fact, all these things come from the political philosophy of Deen Dayal Upadhyay ji, who held that all the public policies should be deeply rooted in the culture and civilization of a country in his famous philosophy of integral humanism. As in recent days, identity in which culture and civilization are important ingredients became a driving norm of Indian foreign policy. The soft power automatically assumes importance. As you know, soft power is a power of ideas, persuasion, and attraction. It is based on co-option rather than coercion, which is inherited in the Indian philosophy. It emanates from the country's culture, political values, and foreign policy orientation. Soft power is a tool to achieve foreign policy goals without coercion, to support a country's hard power, which is military and economic and nature. And often when the hard power fails, the soft power can work. And in fact, soft power is a resource. The main thing besides soft power as a resource is how we are going to project it. And the projection part of the soft power is the public diplomacy. That is, making world understand, making the audiences, both domestic and the international, to understand what government's ideas are on the different issues or what the government's stand is on different issues. But besides this, the major work of the public diplomacy is to project a country's soft power. So the recent efforts by the Prime Minister Modi and his government is to project India's soft power. Yoga as India's soft power is a big public diplomacy initiative and the public diplomacy onslaught to exert India's cultural influence. So far, yoga has been used by our foreign policy makers to do the image building. This is for the first time yoga is being used to exert India's soft power influence abroad. Often nations work on the smart power, which is the combination of the hard and the soft power. And yoga plays a well designated role in that. With yoga, which is practiced across the globe by millions of people, India has made its presence felt even in every household, I would say. And in fact, by its cultural richness, millions of people have been identifying yoga as India's gift to the world. Both Ministry of Youth and Indian Council for Cultural Relations, that is an autonomous organization of the Ministry of External Affairs, have been looking after this project of yoga as India's soft power. ICCR's cultural centers abroad have been the linchpin of propelling and popularizing yoga in different parts of the world. And they propagate the authentic form of yoga which has been mentioned in the ancient Indian texts. You know, there have been complaints that many of the, I would say, yoga studios in Europe and America have been using yoga as a physical exercise, which yoga is actually not. And the yoga is deeply rooted in the spirituality. And spirituality is, you know, one of the important aspect of yoga. And most of the studios in America and Europe have been practicing yoga as something bereft of the spirituality. So the ICSSR and the Ministry of Ayush are giving to the world the authentic form of yoga which has been practiced by our which has been mentioned in our ancient text and the religious text. Now, there is another important aspect which has been taken care of by the ICCR and the Ministry of Ayush is that yoga is not, yoga has been treated as a commodity in the West, and we are against the commodification of the yoga. We don't like this, that yoga is something which can be sold to the households, or which the trainers can use it, to get some financial mileage out of it. Rather, yoga should reach to the households without any cost, or with the minimum of the cost, for which Government of India is working. Its Ministry of Ayush and the ICCR are working. We have sent to the different cultural centers of the ICCR the trained yoga teachers who have been organizing regular sessions at the centers and in the other parts of their host country. So in that way, we are trying to bring forward an authentic form of yoga which is deeply rooted in the spirituality. We don't want to communicate to the world, or to have to the word yoga something which they recognize as Indian, but it doesn't carry the traits of the yoga which has been propelled and propagated by our forefathers. Another thing is that in which India is interested is that we bring yoga as a form of knowledge. It's not something which is just a form of exercise, or which is something related to spirituality, or which is just given away by several saints or such kind of thing. That is one thing. But we also want to bring yoga to the curriculums of the university in the various parts of the world, or not only as a topic, but also as an entire curriculum being designed to propel the knowledge of yoga. Maybe the degrees or the certificates can be, courses can be initiated on yoga. So, and also within India, what has been demanded by many of the supporters of yoga, many of those who have been very interested in propelling yoga, was government to make the yoga tourist circuits, where the domestic and the international population can take full advantage of the different, traits of yoga and the spirituality. Another thing is that various, people across the world, even the people from the Indian origin, have tried to try to get the intellectual property rights on the different poses of yoga, to which we oppose, because we have been, giving this knowledge, giving this advantage to the world virtually free of cost. We don't want that someone, patent the poses of the yoga and then earns, financial mileage out of it. So these are some of the issues, like yoga being brought to the curriculum of the university, yoga as India's soft power, what Prime Minister Modi has done regarding it, what Deen Dayalji's philosophy say about it, how the tourist circuits can be brought, and how we are against the commodification of yoga, and how yoga exerts India's, cultural influence abroad. So with these words, I remain, and I thank the organizer again. And I wish that all the panelists here, they will come out with a thorough discussion on this very vital, very important issue, and they will give the insightful and the enlightening, thoughts to all the listeners when it is converted into a video and placed on the YouTube. So I once again thank Pratisparda, Animesh, and Abhay for giving me this opportunity to put an introductory remark to the yoga as India's soft power. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I hope your inaugural address will surely guide our panelists and to whomsoever who will listen this. Now, starting with the panel discussion, let me first give a brief introduction of our panelists. Our first panelist is Mr. Arvind Kumar Mishra. He is an ICSSR doctoral fellow at Department of Political Science, Banaras Hindu University. He completed his master's in political science at Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. He completed his graduation in political science honors from Banaras Hindu University. He has also taught political science to undergraduate students from year 2015 to 2017. He has worked as former project fellow at Jawaharlal Nehru University and former project associate at Athena Infonomics at Chennai. Our second panelist is Dr. Rohan Kumar. He has completed his MPhil and PhD in peace research from Banaras Hindu University. He has spent 6 months at Karlstad University learning intercultural communication as part of BHU exchange program. He has received prestigious Linnaeus Palm Scholarship in Sweden. Currently, he is teaching peace studies to American students at Institute for Study Abroad, Butler University, United States of America, Varanasi Center. Our third panelist is Ms. Kriti Tripathi, who has completed her bachelor's and master's at BHU. She has qualified Junior Research Fellowship in Political Science with 100 percentile marks, which is both her personal achievement and a proud moment for the department. She is currently pursuing her MPhil in Subaltern Studies from Banaras Hindu University. She has participated in various national and international conferences. Our fourth panelist is Mr. Kunal Shandelia. He is currently in first year of his master's from Banaras Department of Political Science, Banaras Hindu University. His field of study includes governmentability crisis, policy analysis, and electoral politics. He has contributed articles in many reputed public policy blogs. He wants to join academia and pursue his interest in teaching. Our fifth and the last panelist is Ms. Vasudha Dwivedi, who is a final year student of political science honors at Banaras Hindu University. She was a member of the panel selected for interaction with German president in 2018. Her area of interest include Indian culture, Indian tradition and civilization. Her aim is to pursue a career in research and academics. I welcome you all on board to this panel discussion. As we all know, cultural diplomacy has always played a significant role in determining India's foreign policy. India has always used its rich, vibrant, diversified culture as one of its most important tools in realms of foreign affairs. To keep this relevant, Indian government has established different cultural centers in various countries. India has initiated several cultural ties with various nations. A major medium of introducing India's rich cultural practices to the world was yoga. Yoga, which is an ancient Indian spiritual and physical practice, which is all about creating a balance in one's life. It is about balancing senses, balancing body, soul, mind in order to live healthy and living in peace. Yoga has played a very important role in enhancing the culture at global level as it is beyond the boundaries of religion, culture, and society. In recent years, let me add. In recent years, various yogis, yoga gurus, leaders, and citizens of India have time and again insisted the world to recognize the power of yoga, and soon, by the efforts of our current Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, India achieved a major breakthrough in enhancing its cultural diplomacy on 11th of October 2014, when the United Nations General Assembly accepted India's proposal and declared 21st June as International Day of Yoga for the whole world. This declaration was accepted by the majority of nations. Today, on 6th International Day of Yoga, the world has accepted the power of yoga, and India has successfully used it as a soft power and a tool to accomplish and recognize its rich cultural heritage. Yoga, which rightly depicts India's mantra of Sarve Santu Niramaya, has deeply and strongly enhanced India's cultural relations with the world. Now, starting with the panel discussion, let me first invite our first speaker of the session, Mr. Arvind Kumar Mishra. Over to you, sir.
Respected Sanjay sir and dear friends, I welcome and thank you all for joining us today. The 21st century is a testimony to growing vulnerabilities. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
The 21st century is a testimony to growing human vulnerabilities and susceptibilities of different kinds. The world in which we live today has become more challenging than ever. The dangers of religious and racial fundamentalism and fanaticism, growing lifestyle disorders, and human greed, existential threat of climate change and environmental degradation, and yes, the expanding empires of viruses and multiple enemies of the Homo sapiens. We are trapped in a vicious cycle and to much extent self-made disastrous complexities. On this bedrock of the perennial quest for harmonious human survival, I will start my today's talk. Today, the world is celebrating the International Day of Yoga. I would say that yoga is India's exceptional contribution and, uh, and a magical gift to the world. By realizing the sublime dream of Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Santu Niramaya, which means let all the sentient being at peace, let no one suffers from illness. Different postures, techniques, and practices of yoga work as panacea for mental, physical, and spiritual maladies. We understand the concept of soft power, which is propounded by Joseph Samuel Nye, and which means the ability to obtain preferred outcomes through attraction rather than coercion or payments. The soft power is always persuasive, unlike the hard power, which is always coercive. The soft power requires no violence at all. The institutional operation of soft power rests upon setting and redirecting cultural agenda by the state to achieve broader political objectives and its appealing nature. The soft power is very attractive and it is constructive and creative, whereas the hard power is disruptive and destructive and it kills. Political values, culture, and foreign policy have been included as the pillars of soft power. Yoga as India's soft power and a part of cultural diplomacy is not something new. Its diplomatic propagation can be found in the international and multinational arena by the government of India since independence. But it is only under the visionary leadership of our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, yoga was globally rebranded and codified. Prime Minister Narendra Modi must be credited for his strong political will and a commitment when he proposed to celebrate the International Day of Yoga. During his address to UN General Assembly on 27 September 2014, Mr. Modi spoke that, quote, yoga is an invaluable gift of India's ancient tradition. It embodies unity of mind and body, thought and action, restraint and fulfillment, harmony between man and nature, a holistic approach to health and well-being. It is not about exercise, but to discover the sense of oneness with yourself, the world, and the nature. By changing our lifestyle and creating consciousness, it can help in our well-being. Let us work towards adopting an International Yoga Day, unquote. Further, this day, 21st June, was suggested by Mr. Modi for celebrating the International Day of Yoga. UN Declaration of International Day of Yoga was a phenomenal success and the global recognition of yoga as India's soft power. While looking back at the history of cultural diplomacy in India, we mainly find two organizations which were entrusted to work for this. The first one is Indian Council for Cultural Relations, that is ICCR, and Indian Council for World Affairs, that is ICWA. ICWA was established in 1943 with an objective to promote India's relations with countries through study, research, discussions, lectures, exchange of ideas, and information with other organizations within and outside India engaged in similar activities. ICCR was set up in 1950 to establish, revive, and strengthen cultural relations and mutual understanding between India and other countries. ICCR, since its inception, has been working to promote yoga and yogic practices through its cultural centers in different parts of the world. On 6th of April 2017, the then Minister of State in the Ministry of External Affairs, General Dr. V.K. Singh, while answering to a question in the Rajya Sabha, informed that at present ICCR has 37 cultural centers in various countries of the world. ICCR deploys India-based yoga teachers in 21 of these centers. Other than these centers, ICCR deploys 2 yoga teachers each at India-China Yoga College at Yunnan Minju University, China, and Indo-Turkmenistan Center of Yoga and Traditional Medicines at Ashgabat, Turkmenistan. Both of these were established in 2015. He further stated that ICCR has been deploying India-based yoga teachers at its centers since 1980s, and 5,387 plus students are being trained every month at these 21 centers. In April 2018, the Government of India launched a Study in India program. This initiative is functional under the Ministry of Human Resource and Development. A Study in India program has designed several courses. Some are long-term, some are short-term courses. There are 3 short-term courses on Buddhism, Ayurveda, and yoga. The course on yoga has become very popular and demanding among foreign students in India. In this course, they are learning ancient Indian philosophy of life, and through the modules of mental, physical, and spiritual experiences and exercises, they are learning to acquire the union and mind and body and spirit. Indian cultural heritage, spirituality, and knowledge system found its worldwide reach many centuries ago, even when this term soft power was not conceptualized at all. Before 1990s, Indian soft power resources were inadequately considered for promoting as a foreign policy objectives through cultural diplomacy. The leaderships before 1990s were unenthusiastic and less interested in projecting yoga or similar soft powers as a goal of foreign policy and diplomatic operation. After the dismantling of the bipolar world order and the economic crisis in India, the expansion of the forces of globalization and a liberalized world order, the essential turning point came in the discourse of Indian foreign policy since the early years of 1990s. The liberal, institutional, and social constructivist approaches in the field of international relations were guiding and giving way to the sheer optimism for expanding and utilizing soft power resources for the country's emergence as a major global soft power. In the 1990 era, India emerged as a major information technology hub. The use of various modes of digital communication and social media. These, these new modes of communication facilitated a global reach, for India's soft power. These efforts resulted in the worldwide consciousness and liking for yoga and Indian soft powers. I would like to mention here that the dissemination of yoga was not always state propelled and sponsored. Several and different individuals, intellectuals, and members of non-governmental organizations took self-initiative and they came to India and they got themselves enrolled in different yoga institutes, centers, and ashramas in the different parts of the country. And they started learning and getting the training of yoga. After getting training in yogic practices, many of them set up their own yoga centers in their respective homeland and started disseminating the knowledge about yoga and giving training to interested people at a large scale. A significant change has been visible in the deliberations of cultural diplomacy since Mr. Modi came to power in 2014. Two patterns are quite noteworthy in Mr. Modi's way of exploring and utilizing soft power. The first one is addressing and communicating with the Indian diaspora during his foreign visits. And the second one is mentioning and talking about Indian civilization and cultural heritage in his every oration. These effects have been effectively culminating in the reawakening and longing of Indian diasporic community for getting back to harness the most ancient yogic sciences and its practices. The foreign political and business delegations to India and similar Indian delegations abroad, they witness informal yet significant mention of how yoga has been changing the lives of people, and for that they find themselves obliged and grateful to India. Yoga has helped India to garner support and get several works done which otherwise would have been very difficult to. After the establishment of Buddhist and Ramayana circle, the new yoga centers are being set up around these places and are getting foreign tourists enrolled for learning yoga. And in the last, I would say that the present pandemic and crisis of COVID-19 requires yoga more than ever. The yoga has the potential